Hello everyone and welcome to the Literacy Center Math tutorial. This is Meghna and today we are going to talk about fractions again, and the next part we'll be exploring is equivalent fractions. So before we start with this tutorial, I would recommend you to go back to the website and access the previous one. So this will be easier for you to understand. So let's dive in with this topic. So before we start, if you know about the previous tutorial and if you have accessed it, we know it by now that what is fractions? Fraction is just a part of a whole, and today we'll be exploring what do we understand by equivalent fractions. So what do we understand by equivalent fractions? In math, equivalent fractions can be defined as fractions with different numerators and denominators that represent the same value or proportion of the whole. So this is something you need to remember. Equivalent fractions are nothing but the fractions with different numbers, different numerator and denominators that represents the same value or that represent the same proportion of the whole. So let's understand this more by seeing few examples. So for example, if you see these rectangular bars here, so let's see the first one. The first rectangular bar, you can see this is the whole rectangular bar, and if you divide this into two equal parts, so after dividing it into two equal parts, how you gonna represent this half part? This is 1 by 2. Another half part is again 1 by 2. So here you can see this whole rectangular part can be represented in a fraction form. This half part can be a fraction representation by 1 by 2. Now let's move forward and divide this whole rectangular bar into 4 equal parts. 1, 2, 3 and 4. So how you gonna represent this one part as a fraction is 1 by 4. One part out of 4 equal parts. Now let's see how you gonna represent these two parts, 1 by 4 and 1 by 4, right? So if you look at the picture above, the first one, you can see this is the same part or same fraction of the whole, which can be represented as 1 by 2, and same can be represented by 1 by 4 and 1 by 4. This would be 2 by 4. And if you divide this rectangular bar further into more smaller equal parts, that would be 1. If you divide this into 8 equal parts, this one part will be 1 out of 8, right? Similarly, all these fractions or all these parts will be 1 by 8. So if you look at this shaded part here, this is again the same fraction of the whole, similar to this one. This can be represented as 4 part 1, 2, 3 and 4 parts out of 8 equal parts, right? So here it is more clear to us that equivalent fractions are nothing but the fraction with different numerators and denominators that represents the same value. This represents the same value or the proportion of the whole. So let's see more examples to understand it more clearly. If you look at these circles here, look at these two circles. In this circle, you can see half of the circle is red and half of the circle is blue. So here you can say how much part is red? 1 out of 2 parts is shaded red. Look at this second circle here. Here you are actually dividing this whole circle into 6 equal parts. So here, if I ask you to tell me how much of this circle or how much fraction of this circle is red, so you can say 3 out of 6 is red, right? So technically, the first one says that half is red and the second one says 3 parts out of 6, 3 by 6 is red. But the same amount of red is there on the both circles, right? So this 1 by 2 must be the same amount as 3 by 6. So we can say 1 by 2 is equal to 3 by 6. So these are called equivalent fractions since they are equal amounts or they bear same value. So before we just look at these pictures to see if two fractions were equivalent, but we need to be able to do it without pictures as well. You will not be always given a rectangular bar or the circles to understand or define the equivalent fractions. You need to do it and you need to understand it in terms of numbers as well. What about these? 1 by 2 and 400 by 800. So let's take the fraction with the bigger numbers and try to reduce it or try to simplify it. To simplify it or reduce it to this, you can see this number is too big. So if I ask you to reduce this bigger expression into the smaller expression, what you can do is, you can take the number that can divide numerator and denominator as well. So here you can see 400 divided by 400, 800 divided by 400 again. So this will be, if you solve this, you will get the number 1 by 2. So even if you have this bigger number, you can reduce it to the smallest expression. In fact, we can find a bunch of fractions that are equivalent to these. 1 by 2 is equal to 400 by 800. This can be simplified into the number 3 by 6. This can be simplified to number 9 by 18 or 25 by 50. So here is a quick trick to see if two fractions are equivalent. If I ask you, is 3 by 5 is equal to 39 by 65? Can you tell me whether these two fractions are equivalent or not? Let's find out how can we do this or how can we find it out whether they are equivalent or not. We can check this by doing cross multiplication. And how we can do this? All you need to do is you can cross multiply 3 multiplied by 65 here, 39 multiplied by 5 here, and find out the answer for this. So when we do the cross multiplication for these numbers 3 by 5 and 39 by 65, we get the number 195 on both the sides. So this shows us that these fractions are equivalent fractions. But what if you don't get the similar number on both the sides? If we got the same thing on both sides, these are equal or equivalent fractions. But if these numbers are not equal, that means these are not equivalent fractions. And this is the easiest trick to find out. All you need to do is cross multiplication. So let me share some fun facts about the fractions with you here. A denominator of any fractions can never be 0. Egyptians invented fractions as early as 1800 BC, and they used fractions for holding the records of the land. Equivalent fractions represent the same amount of distance or points on the number line. All equivalent fractions reduce to the same fraction in their simplest form. So if you have any questions or if you need any help with this tutorial or with the subject, you can text us and email us and we will get back to you. Thank you.